You see, before you can become anything, before strength, before mastery, before transformation, there is one battle you must win, the battle of the mind. And this battle is not won by shouting louder than the world. It is won in silence. That's where it begins. Most people are not thinking. They are reacting. Reacting to noise, before like, to opinions, to trends, to fears that were never their own to begin with. From the moment they wake up, their minds are hijacked. By devices, by media, before like, by people who profit from their confusion. And the tragedy is, they think this chaos is normal. Before like, but you cannot become uncontrollable if you are not even aware of who is doing the controlling. Reclaiming your mind means creating space between what happens out there and what moves in here. This space is where real power lives. It is the space where your own voice can finally be heard. But it is subtle. It hides under the layers of conditioning, beneath the chatter of identity, expectation, and survival. And so the first step is to kill the noise. This is not about escaping the world. It's about filtering it. It's about creating intentional stillness so you can learn the difference between reaction and response, between impulse and insight. When you slow down the mind, you start to notice most of your thoughts are not yours. They are echoes of teachers, parents, advertisements, politics, fears picked up unconsciously. And as long as you confuse those voices for your own, you will remain under the illusion of freedom while living in psychological slavery. Do not underestimate how deep this runs. The system has trained you to be predictable, to seek comfort over clarity, to choose distraction over depth, because a distracted mind is a controlled mind. A scattered mind is a silent surrender to the will of others, the dangerous ones. The truly uncontrollable are those who pause, who observe, who refuse to be triggered by every flicker of external noise. To be still in the mind is to reclaim choice. When you can sit in silence without needing to be entertained, you begin to hear something extraordinary. Yourself. Not the anxious self. Not the image you've built for others, but the deeper intelligence that has been watching all along. That voice, that presence is what you've forgotten. But it hasn't forgotten you. And when you reconnect with it, the world begins to shift. Your actions become deliberate. Your attention sharpens. You no longer run toward things that deplete you before like, and you stop explaining yourself to people who will never understand. That is the beginning of sovereignty. Not physical, not social, but psychological sovereignty. And that is the foundation of becoming dangerously uncontrollable. Because if you do not master your mind, someone else will. So start here. Start with silence. Not just the absence of sound, but the presence of awareness. Practice sitting with yourself until your thoughts settle like dust in still water. Train your attention like a blade, cutting through the unnecessary, the trivial, the toxic. You don't need more information. You need more presence. From that silence, a different kind of movement will emerge. Not noise, not reaction, but clarity, direction, precision. And when you move from that place, you are no longer playing the game. They are. Most people are too loud to hear themselves. Be the one who is silent enough to listen. Then move, not with noise, not with panic, but with power. Let the world make noise. You become the signal. Most people are trapped in a mental pattern they don't even recognize. Constantly waiting. Waiting for a sign, waiting for the right time, waiting to be chosen. Somewhere along the line, they were taught that in order to move, they must be approved, that their actions require permission. And because of this deep-rooted conditioning, they hesitate. They pause not because they lack the capacity, but because they have been trained to seek external validation before trusting their own inner authority. Before like, this is one of the most subtle and dangerous traps of modern life. It keeps people quiet when they should speak, passive when they should act, small when they were meant to grow. And it comes from a belief that someone else holds the key to their destiny, that success must be granted, that worth must be proven. But this belief system is a cage, a silent contract we never signed but still obey. Understand this clearly. No one is coming to give you the green light. The door is already open, but you must walk through it. The uncontrollable ones, the ones who shift the world, they are not waiting. They do not ask, am I ready? They decide that readiness is a byproduct of movement, not a prerequisite for it. They choose themselves every day without apology. Why is this so rare? Because choosing yourself is uncomfortable. It means standing alone in your convictions while others doubt you. It means acting on your vision while others are still debating whether it's practical. And most people would rather be accepted than be free. They crave belonging more than they crave becoming. But here's the truth: if you always need permission, you will never become powerful. If your actions are always contingent on approval, you are not leading your life. You are being led. To become dangerously uncontrollable, you must break this pattern. Stop outsourcing your self-worth. Stop waiting for credentials, for applause, for the ideal circumstances. Life does not reward the passive observer. It responds to the one who dares to move. Of course, this doesn't mean being reckless or arrogant. It cultivating a deep trust in your inner compass. It means acting from clarity, not consensus. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more aligned action. And alignment only happens when you stop negotiating with your potential. Many people confuse humility with hesitation. They think being humble means shrinking. But true humility is not weakness. It is strength without the need to prove. It is moving forward with grace without waiting to be seen. That is the kind of force that cannot be controlled, because it begs. It does not wait. It does not explain. So ask yourself honestly, what are you waiting for? Whose permission are you secretly seeking? And what would happen if you stopped asking? Once you drop the need for validation, you become very difficult to manipulate. You are no longer caught in the trap of pleasing or performing. Your actions begin to emerge from essence, not expectation. And that is where your real power lies. Every time you hesitate to step forward, not because you're unready, but because you're unsure what others will think, remember this: you're not here to be chosen. You're here to choose. And once you do, the energy of your life changes. People may not understand it. They may resist it, but they will feel it. Because nothing is more threatening to a controlled system than a human being who no longer waits to be told who they are. You don't need permission to become who you already are. Step into it fully, unapologetically. The gate was never locked. You were always the key. If you want to become truly uncontrollable, you must develop mastery over a force that governs nearly every action people take, but which most have never truly understood: emotion. Emotion is not the enemy. It's not something to suppress or eliminate, but it is not a compass either. It's a signal, a messenger, not a master. The difference between a person who is free and one who is enslaved lies in this: the free person feels everything, but obeys nothing blindly. You see, emotion is energy in motion. It rises and falls like waves, often without permission or prediction. Anger, fear, joy, sadness, these are not problems. The problem arises when people attach their identity to them. When they say, I am angry, rather than I feel anger. There's a world of difference between the two. One is a passing cloud. The other becomes your sky. Most people never notice when they slip from observer to servant. When anger speaks, they act. When sadness appears, they collapse. When fear whispers, they stop. Their lives become emotional reactions strung together, one after the other, and they call it a personality. But this is not identity. It's programming. To be dangerously uncontrollable, you must break that cycle. You must learn to stand at the center of your emotional storm, not to fight it, but to watch it, to feel every wave rise, crash and pass, and remain still at the center, not numb, not indifferent, but awake, alert, clear. Clarity is not coldness. It is presence without distortion. When you are present, fully, without identifying with your emotion, you become capable of right action. You can be furious and still speak calmly. You can be afraid and still move forward. You can be heartbroken and still make wise decisions. That is the kind of power that systems cannot anticipate, that people cannot control. And yes, it is difficult. Because emotion feels urgent. It pulls you into movement, into expression, into reaction. But if you can hold still for just a few seconds, if you can observe without being consumed, then you begin to develop what very few ever dog inner command. It's not about suppressing. Suppression is weakness disguised as control. Suppression means you're afraid of what's inside you. Mastery, on the other hand, is facing your emotion fully and remaining steady. Like a warrior standing in fire, unflinching, unmoved by heat, because he knows the fire will pass, but the choice he makes in that moment will shape everything that follows. That's the kind of person the world doesn't know what to do with. The kind who doesn't flinch under pressure, who doesn't lash out when provoked, who doesn't beg for validation when in pain. They look like they are still, but inside, they are sharp, awake, disciplined. These are not emotionless people. They are emotionally evolved. Because once you can feel deeply without being driven blindly, you are free. And when you are free from your own inner compulsions, no one can control you from the outside. So begin to notice the gap, the space between stimulus and response. That space is where strength is born. Every time you feel an emotion rise, ask yourself, what is the wise response, not the automatic one? That single question can be the difference between destruction and transformation. You cannot stop emotions from coming, but you can stop them from ruling you. And that is where real, untouchable power begins. Let others be led by their moods. You lead with awareness. Let emotion inform you, not define you. Feel everything. Oh, be nothing. Everyone wants power, but few are willing to do what power demands. Not in the loud, aggressive way that people often imagine, but in the quiet, repetitive, disciplined way that truly dangerous people live. If you want to become uncontrollable, you have to stop chasing motivation and start building identity. And that identity must be rooted in one principle: discipline. Most people confuse discipline with punishment. They see it as restriction, limitation, something that suffocates freedom. But the truth is, discipline is freedom. The undisciplined person is the one who is controlled by urges, by distractions, by the mood of the moment. They do not act, they react. They do not lead, they follow their impulses. But when you train discipline, something subtle and powerful begins to happen. You are no longer moved by how you feel in the moment. You are moved by a deeper clarity, a commitment to who you've chosen to become. And that choice is repeated daily, not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent actions that no one sees. You don't become dangerous by doing something once. You become dangerous by doing it until it becomes who you are. And this transformation doesn't happen by accident. It happens through structure, through repetition. Doing what is required, especially when you don't feel like it. People often ask, how do I stay motivated? The answer is simple. You don't. You outgrow the need for motivation. Motivation is a spark. It comes and goes. But discipline is firewood. It keeps burning even in silence, even in darkness, even when no one's watching. That's what makes you uncontrollable. Because the world can take away your comfort, your recognition, your support, but it cannot take your consistency. You become the kind of person who trains when tired, who works when you're inspired, who sharpens the blade every day regardless of the applause or outcome. And make no mistaking, this doesn't mean perfection. You will miss. You will fall, but the disciplined person does not make that failure part of their identity. They return again and again, not because it feels good, but because it's who they are now. And that kind of repetition turns you into something very few can comprehend. Reliable in a world that is erratic. There is an inner dignity in showing up every day, even if it's small, even if it's slow. Because over time, that discipline becomes self-respect. And self-respect builds an energy that cannot be faked. You walk differently. You speak differently. People feel something in you. And they don't know what it is, but they know they can't manipulate it. That's the secret. You train discipline until it's no longer about willpower. It becomes part of your nervous system, a rhythm, a pulse, Something that carries you forward when the world gets heavy and the path goes dark. The goal is not just to succeed. The goal is to become so consistent, so intentional, before that success has no choice but to emerge as a side effect. The real reward isn't what you achieve, it's who you become in the process. So if you want to be free, train. If you want to be unshakable, train. If you want to become the kind of person who cannot be moved by chaos or conquered by failure, then train until it becomes identity. Let others wait for motivation. You build discipline, make consistency your rebellion, your proof weapon. Let your routine be so precise that even course becomes predictable. Before in a world addicted to intensity, be the one who masters repetition. There is a moment in every life when you're realizing not everyone wants you to rise. In fact, the moment you begin to move differently, think independently, and grow beyond the expectations others placed on you, that's when the resistance shows itself. Sometimes it's subtly a raised eyebrow, a sarcastic comment, a quiet distancing. Sometimes it's direct criticism, discouragement, even betrayal. But in all forms, it carries the same message. Stay in line if you want to become dangerously uncontrollable. Before you must free yourself from the invisible leash of approval. Because the more you grow, the more your very existence will make people uncomfortable. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your growth confronts their stagnation. You become a mirror, and not everyone wants to see clearly. This is where most people fold. Before they shrink to fit. They hide their fire to keep others warm. They slow their pace so no one feels left behind. But here's the true thing, you were not born to be digestible. You were born to expand, and expansion will often require solitude. The path of transformation is not crowded. You'll have to leave some people behind. Not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. And this is hard because humans are tribal. We're wired to belong. But there is a deeper belonging than fitting in. It is the belonging to your own truth. Before your own direction, your own evolution. When you sacrifice that to keep others comfortable, you don't just betray yourself, you teach yourself that your light is too much. And that's how potential dies. To grow beyond the crowd, you must stop asking for their permission to do so. Stop explaining yourself. Stop softening your edges for people who have never even sharpened theirs. Your energy is a currency. Stop spending it to maintain connections that dilute your clarity. Now, before this doesn't mean you reject love or isolate in bitterness. It means you stop bargaining with your values to be accepted. You lead with integrity before and let the right people align naturally. The ones who are meant to walk with you will not be intimidated by your growth. They will be inspired by it. Before but do not expect applause while you're building. Often, the people who cheer the loudest are the ones most afraid of you changing. Because if you can rise, what excuse do they have? Your transformation becomes a silent challenge, and not everyone is ready to accept it. So what do? You bless the past, and you keep walking. You choose depth over comfort, truth over harmony, evolution over attachment. That is the price of freedom. You will lose some people. You will gain yourself. Before and once you've tasted the clarity that comes from being true to yourself, from no longer needing to be understood by those who refuse to understand themselves, you will never trade that again for the illusion of belonging. You see, real power is not loud. It doesn't need to convince. It just moves, calm, clear, certain, and that kind of movement either attracts those who are ready or disturbs those who are not. Either way, it is not your concern, so walk boldly. Burn bridges if they lead you backward. Outgrow circles that spin in place. The world doesn't need another person who fits in. It needs more people who rise above. Your evolution is not a betrayal. It is your responsibility. Let others fear the silence of walking alone. You listen to what that silence is trying to teach you. There comes a point when you must ask yourself a very serious question. What exactly are you preparing for? How much more knowledge do you need before you act? How many more plans, routines, goals, or visions must you create before you finally become the embodiment of them? You see, Most people are endlessly preparing for a life they never truly live. They stay trapped in cycles of learning, optimizing, analyzing, and refining. It feels like progress, but it's not. It's hesitation in disguise. They mistake preparation for transformation. But knowledge that isn't lived becomes weight. And over time, that weight turns into a burden, a mind full of insight and a body still frozen by fear, to become dangerously uncontrollable. You must stop waiting to be ready and start living like the person you claim to be. The mind can rehearse endlessly, but it's only in action that you are tested, sharpened, and awakened. And not action for the sake of movement, but action born of alignment, intentional, present, real. There is a vast difference between knowing the path and walking it. Before, like, everyone knows they should be disciplined. Everyone knows they should be courageous, consistent, and clear. But the knowing isn't what changes you. It's the embodiment. Before, like, the moment you become that person in the silence of your daily choices, when no one is watching and nothing is guaranteed. And that's where most people stop. Before, like, they wait until they feel like the person they want to become before acting like them. But it doesn't work that way. Identity doesn't arrive. It is earned through repetition. Before, like, through doing the hard thing again and again until it stops feeling hard and starts feeling like you. This is what it means to walk the path of self-mastery. You stop reacting to life and start creating it. You don't wait for energy. You generate it. You don't wait for clarity. You act your way into it. Before, like, and when doubt arises, and it always will, you meet it not with analysis, but with movement. Because doubt cannot survive direct experience. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real. You stumble, you learn, you adjust, but you do not pause your evolution every time it gets uncomfortable. You move forward anyway, because you've realized something most never. Discomfort is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that you're growing. Too many people are addicted to potential. They love the idea of what they could be, but they fear the death of their current self. They resist the confrontation required to evolve. Before, like, but you cannot become who you are meant to be while staying who you are. One must die for the other to live, and that death is not dramatic. It happens in subtle moments. When you wake up early instead of sleeping in, when you stay calm in course, when you show up fully when no one else does. These small, repeated deaths of your old self are what give birth to new one. The world doesn't need more thinkers. It needs more doors. Before, like, people who live in alignment with what they say they believe. People whose presence carries weight, not because they shout, but because their actions speak louder than any words ever could. So stop waiting. Stop rehearsing. You don't need another plan. You don't need another week. You don't need to feel ready. You need to decide. Decide who you are. And then prove it every single day until the world has no choice but to reflect back the truth you become. You are not here to perform your potential. You are here to embody it. And the moment you do, life stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that moves through you.